introduce ourselves, and then we'll ask you to introduce yourselves. But just a quick preview, we're going to ask you question number 1 today, so you don't start to think about that. My name is Marilyn Cover. I'm from Portland, Oregon, where I've been an adjunct professor at Lewis and Clark Law School.
My name is Meg Hubeck. I work at the University of Virginia, Center for Politics. I run the Youth Leadership Initiative, and I'm a former teacher.
And my name is Liza Prendergast. I'm an alum of the We the People program from many years ago. I currently work for an organization called Democracy International that's based in Washington, D.C. I also love puns and wanted to compliment the full investment.
Very well done. Very well done.
Please introduce yourselves.
Hallo, mijn naam is Savannah Brooks. Hello, my name is Savannah Brooks and I lived in Germany for 4 years.
سلام اسمي هيوان برهانونا and Addis Ababa تولدت كنت. Hi, my name is Heywan Berhanu and I was born in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Hola, me llamo Julia. Hi, my name is Julia and I'm currently learning Spanish to become an immigration attorney.
Namaste, mere naam Aditi hai. Hello, my name is Aditi and both of my parents immigrated here from India. And on behalf of all of us as Unit 6, our advisor Gretchen Wolfing, and the great state of Washington, thank you so much for taking the time to judge us.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let me read question 1 and then we'll get to hear what you have to say. Citizens are more likely to get the policies they want when initiatives are available than when government decisions are the monopoly of elected officials. Do you agree or disagree with this claim? To what extent are ballot initiatives democratic? Is direct democracy an appropriate way of making public policy in the 21st century? If states vary in their use of such things as initiative and referendums, what challenges might arise, if any, due to the structure of federalism? You may begin.
As the people are the only legitimate fountain of power,
It seems strictly consonant to the Republican theory to recur to the same original authority
Whenever it may be necessary to enlarge, diminish, or new model the powers of the government.
James Madison, Federalist 49.
initiatives, or ballot initiatives, allow citizens to propose new statutes and constitutional amendments, while referendums allow citizens a direct way to disapprove of a law passed by the legislature.
Ballot initiatives are democratic. However, many improvements must be made in order to make them effective in meeting citizens' needs.
Forms of the initiative and referendum process have held an important part in the United States for centuries. In 17th century New England, for example, issues were posted on town hall meeting agendas and were voted on by citizens.
During the populist and progressive era of the 19th century, the initiative process was proposed by activists who wanted a direct way to enact reform that would otherwise be blocked by state legislature.
Since South Dakota first enacted the process in 1898, it has since been implemented in 26 states. There is much history in initiatives being able to effectively carry out what citizens want.
Despite their effectiveness in the past, today, ballot initiatives are hindered by factors such as misinterpreting legislation, cost, and the domination of special interest groups.
Perhaps the best example of this is California's Proposition 22. Over $200 million was pumped into the campaign, with 95% of this coming from companies like Uber and DoorDash who were pushing for a yes vote.
The wording of the initiative confused citizens about what side was working to create fair employee benefits. As a result, one survey of California voters found that 40% of yes voters thought that they were supporting gig workers' ability to earn a living wage, when in fact, this yes vote was only providing these workers with less stable benefits.
Direct democracy was first seen in Athens, Greece, in the 5th century BCE, where all Athens citizens had an opportunity to vote whenever a new law was proposed. This allowed them a direct influence on their government.
Representative democracy has served the United States' immense population better than Athens' idea of direct democracy. However, there are still aspects of direct democracy utilized in our country that need to be altered to be more effective.
For instance, lowering the cost of initiatives can be achieved by improving the method of gathering signatures, either getting rid of circulators entirely or lowering the extensive amount that they get paid.
The influence of special interest groups on the decision-making process can be prevented by limiting the amount of money that can be contributed to political campaigns.
Additionally, lack of expertise from those who craft the wording of initiatives and referendums is another issue that leads to confusion.
To address this, all states should have a public instructor or specific committee to review and certify a ballot's title, caption, and summary to ensure that it is understandable by the common citizen.
Variations in use of initiatives and referendums across differing states leads to tension between state and federal government.
This is illustrated in the case of Gonzales v. Reich, 2005. The the Supreme Court held that the federal government has the power to control the cultivation and use of cannabis, even if it is legal under state law.
In 12 states and DC, the initiative process was used to legalize cannabis. Despite protections these states have put in place, charter banks are still at risk for civil and criminal liability on a federal level.
Although in apparent conflict, the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution explicitly states, all powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
States have consistently exercised laboratories of democracy through adopting laws that differ from the federal governments. Through initiatives like Initiative 502 in Washington State that legalize cannabis, citizens are changing their state laws to meet their needs.
There will always be the occasional conflict between state and federal laws. However, through laboratories of democracy, direct democracy, when utilized effectively, can be a way for citizens' voices to be heard.
Ultimately, the systems of initiatives needs to be changed to better hear and meet the needs of the people. Thank you.
Great, great. So, what might be some dangers, if any, that initiatives would present to personal liberties?
One danger of initiatives or direct democracy to personal liberties is a term coined by French philosopher Alexis de Tocqueville, who claimed that tyranny of the majority was a very inherent fear of democracy, direct democracy. Tyranny of the majority refers to the majority being more likely to strip away minorities' rights when acting as a herd, and this is also seen in the initiative process, as coming out of a research study from the University of Cincinnati. Initiatives that restrict the civil liberties of minorities have a 78% pass rate, as those that deal with other things that only have a 33% pass rate.
This can be seen in Proposition 8 in California, which restricted the right of same-sex marriage, although cities like San Francisco had legalized it at that time. This was later overturned through protests from the people, however, it was still passed.
How do initiatives limit compromise and debate on policy issues?
Well, one way we can see that initiatives limiting debate over a bunch of issues is clearly illustrated in Amendment 3, which was an initiative in Florida. This amendment, one of the main problems of it was also that it was heavily clouded by funding from big private corporations, and this also muddled the debate that happened. This initiative involved the Walt Disney Company and the Seminole Indian Tribes of Florida, and they were both on one side, and they were against the other big gaming corporations, and this was all about casinos, and it was an anti-casino initiative. The Walt Disney Company pumped $20 million, the Seminole Indian Tribes $24 million, and using that money, they sparked a whole campaign with ads on television and on radio broadcasting systems to try to get citizens to vote in their favor to promote their side. So this kind of shows a lack of debate, because oftentimes we see corporations getting their way versus what might actually be best for the people and democracy as a whole.
I would argue that some of this lack of debate that we see can actually lead to positive things, whereas direct democracy or initiatives allow people to act on issues that may be too controversial for representative bodies to act on, as seen in our own state of Washington in Initiative 1639, which created which created stricter gun control laws, such as raising the age to buy a semi-automatic rifle from 18 to 21 and causing there to be more stricter background checks. So in this sense, this is a very heavily debated topic, but it led to action.
I want to ask kind of a related question, which you touched on in your opening about special interests. Are special interests always negative?
Special interests aren't inherently negative. However, special interest groups do kind of lead more towards a kind of almost a mob rule, I would argue, because they do have this centralized idea, and as a group they have higher funds coming in, and they are more likely to have initiatives go through for them. So they're more likely to pass more initiatives, have more power to pass more initiatives, and therefore only benefit themselves.
I would like to disagree with my colleague. I think that although there is a fear of dark money through some of these special interest groups, I've seen that $14 billion was used to fund the 2020 federal election due to the Citizens United versus FEC ruling. Special interest groups are not inherently bad, as seen in our own home state of Washington through Initiative 77 that imposed a carbon tax to reduce carbon emissions for our environment. So a lot of special interest groups use social media to facilitate this, and they came together to raise concerns on the environment. And many of these special interest groups were grassroots organizations and NGOs that really cared about bettering our environment. So in this sense, this was a good action. But these instances are much more or less common.
And we're looking at the issue of initiatives and direct democracy as a whole. A lot of the times initiatives work to address issues that other times aren't really the focus of the main state legislature or otherwise swept under the rug. For example, looking at marijuana or cannabis legislation, that's not necessarily something that state or federal governments would feel the need to address because it's something that's more of a recreational or medical thing and not really the prime issue. However, with even looking at our home state of Washington with Initiative 502 and the legalization of marijuana, which was one of the first states to legalize it, it shows how grassroots organizations and people who are passionate about something can come together and cause change in their government, even if it might not be a certainly imperative issue.
I'm curious, do citizens really have the expertise needed to step into the shoes of the legislator when it comes to ballot measures?
I believe that citizens do not have the education nor the ability to step into the legislator's shoes per se. I would say that the common citizen does not understand a lot of the legal language. This can be seen with a person named Tim Eyman, who is native to our home of Washington, who has used these initiatives to form a career for himself. However, a lot of his initiatives, about 7 of them, have been deemed unconstitutional even though they were voted on by the citizens, as they violated single subject rules or things of the such. And so citizens, citizens are taken advantage of very easily by these interest groups and by corrupt officials and people because they do not understand what exactly these ballots and what these initiatives are saying.
And to add on to my colleague, this was seen in a court case, a Washington State Supreme Court case in Washington Citizens Action versus State, which overruled one of Tim Eyman's laws, I-7722, which was to raise property taxes, but the wording of the initiative was wrong, therefore it violated the single subject rule. So this is a way that the judicial branch can check some of these people.
How can we inform voters, or how can we educate voters to be more aware of referendums and initiatives?
Well, one thing we can see is that with states that have initiatives and referendums out of the 26 states, it has been proven that those states have a more engaged voter body. And one of the main reasons of this is because with initiatives and referendums, which are kind of more niche or might not be as understandable to the common citizen, they have to go out of their way to really understand what they're going to go and vote for.
Another way we can kind of inform our future voters is through higher civic education. As seen as in our own state of Washington, we do have a graduation requirement, to have a half credit in civic education. So our school is more likely to be more informed voters, and other schools, other states can follow the same.
Slightly different question. So states use different processes. The states that do use ballot initiatives use different processes for conducting them. Would it not be easier if the federal government imposed sort of a common process for conducting ballot initiatives across each of the states?
I would say that this would impose on the laboratories of democracy. Initiatives and referendums are really a statewide process, as national initiatives just wouldn't be effective due to tyranny of the majority, our large numbers, etc. So for the federal government to overlay a general rule for states, it wouldn't be upholding of these laboratories of democracy. It wouldn't allow these states to have an idea of what their citizens need. In California, there's a lot less restrictions on getting initiatives on the ballot, whereas in Wisconsin, it is a lot more strict.
I would like to disagree with my colleague. I would like to agree with my colleague. I'd like to disagree with my colleague. I think that having a general bar for how initiatives should be would be a really good idea. As seen through California and Washington's processes, which are way too liberal, and allow propositions such as Proposition 187 in California, which
Keep going, I want to hear.
which barred undocumented immigrants from using emergency public services to not use them. And in this sense, this was a very clear example of tyranny of the majority. Whereas in states such as Nevada, where they make initiatives pass twice to be considered amendments, this is a much more clear example of people being deliberative on the things that they're passing.
Sorry. This was really fun. I'm still writing notes. I thought you really did a great job hitting on all of the points of the question in your opening presentation. The flow from one person to the other was excellent, and you things that we wanted to tease out then when it came to the follow-ups. So that was a great preview of what you wanted to talk about. And certainly in the follow-ups, I really enjoyed, learning more about Disney and the casinos in Florida, and Julia, telling us we needed to have more increased civic education. That's what we're all about, so we were happy to hear that. Juan, your last presentation or last statement on, this ballot measure from California and having to vote twice is a regulation that you agreed, then disagreed, and agreed. But in the end, I thought you made a really good point with that. And Savannah, I really enjoyed, again, you were talking about this person who has had 7 initiatives fail initially when it came to review at the courts because he can't seem to write them correctly. So, but he still is able to get people to follow that. So you really have a wonderful depth of understanding about ballot measures. I'm sure that you're getting close to being able to vote and will be definitely voters on these matters in your fine state. And I just hope that you'll continue your passion for civic education. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you. I wanted to ask you about misinformation, which you hit on in your opening statement, and that is really important, I think, especially for all of you with social media and the news and all these things that people see on TV. And how do we make sense of that in terms of a thing where a person shows up and just votes for something, right? So that's what I was getting at with my question about the debate. That's our legislative process is designed to be slow. And yet, as a public, we tend to be impatient, right? So there's that balance there, just like with everything with our democracy, there's a balance. And thanks for mentioning Alexis de Tocqueville. I'm a big fan, and I always love to hear what he has to say. I think you do a great job. You have great energy, and you play off of each other extremely well. So you're the real definition of what I call a team. And I'm so glad I had a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, I agree. My brain is still going, because you gave us so much information to not just justify your positions, but to show that you have been grappling with the complexity of these issues. I thought you answered all parts of the question very clearly. You gave us very concrete examples from Constitution and Bill of Rights. I mean, there was another example every time you took a position or gave an opinion, you backed it up with often not just one example, but multiple examples, or maybe examples that might be of different perspectives, which I really appreciated. I liked the full range going back in history, kind of where you started. I'm from a small New England town where we still have town meetings, and I appreciated that you sort of went back to very earlier history to really the most pressing issues of today. So our future is in good hands with you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you.